2341 Cloud of Ash. The floor of the cavern was littered with fragments of shattered crystal. Sunny had recalled the obsidian wasps back into the dark depths of his soul and dismissed his helmet, inhaling the frigid air deeply. Now that the sounds of the slaughter had ceased, the melodious tinkling of the crystal wind chimes permeated the silence once more. He exhaled slowly, knowing that the soothing melody would be erased from existence before too long, as well. Not bad, for my first move. He had taken one of the snow figures off the board. Taking a few steps forward, shards of crystal crunching under his feet, Sunny used the blade of his odachi to sweep some of them away. This was where he had killed the last of the crystal wasps, and so, there. Crouching, he reached down and picked up a jade figurine from beneath the shards. It was the snow beast figure, one representing the ice hive. Sunny studied it for a few seconds, then hid it inside his armor. Then, with no more time to waste, he stepped through the shadows and returned to the cave where water was flowing into a deep pool from a forest of crystal stalactites. Manifesting a large cauldron, he hastily filled it with clear water and pulled it into the shadows, appearing on the slopes of the snowy mountain a few seconds later. Kai and Slayer were already waiting for him there, the last rays of the setting sun painting their silhouettes with fiery shades of scarlet. Sunny offered them a friendly smile and brought some water to his lips, drinking greedily. "Ah, I guess it's not poisoned." Then, he raised an eyebrow. "What?" Kai had been staring at him with wide eyes. The charming archer shook his head slowly. No, nothing. It's just, they were great beasts. All 50 of them." His gaze could penetrate solid rock, so he must have seen exactly how Sunny had dealt with the crystal wasps. Sunny grinned. "Were they an expected result, then? It would be a shame if I couldn't do this much as a supreme. After all, I killed my first great devil as a sleeper." Finally, he found a chance to work this one in. Kai's eyes shook, and a moment later, the mountain shook, as well. Sunny sighed, then glanced at his friend languidly. "I suggest you brace yourself." Kai frowned. "Brace myself? For WH. Just then, the sun finally disappeared behind the horizon, and the peak of the mountain exploded with a deafening roar. A towering pillar of smoke and ash rose into the sky, expanding into a mushroom cloud. Sunny remained nonchalant as a great fireball bloomed behind him, and a wave of scorching wind broke against his back. For that, the mountain shook and shook, as if convulsing. Its entire peak was obliterated by the explosion, stone shrapnel and jagged boulders raining from above. A billowing mass of ash was expelled into the sky and spread, obscuring it like a veil of billowing darkness. Great plates of snow were dislodged and slid down, turning into destructive avalanches. Then, the slope of the mountain split, and a flood of luminous lava flowed from its shattered peak, evaporating the snow. Sunny watched the obsidian bridges turn into torrents of ash as he erected a bulwark of shadows higher on the slope, making the lava flow past the narrow stretch of rock where he, Kai, and Slayer stood. He gestured to the cauldron. "How about a drink to celebrate our victory?" Kai gave him a long look, then scooped some water and drank deeply. Before too long, the snowy mountain was gone, replaced by a fuming volcano. The peak had turned into a vast caldera. The snow melted, revealing weathered rock, and the rock was covered by a layer of falling ash. The network of tunnels created by the crystal wasps had been destroyed entirely. Most of the tunnels collapsed, while those that remained were now filled with cooled magma. Night fell, submerging the artificial realm of Ariel's game in darkness. If there was one flaw to the newly established volcano, it was that there was no fortress here for them to hide from the falling ash. So, instead, Sunny created a simple house out of manifested shadows, complete with a few items of crude furniture. There was a desk, a few chairs, and a bed. He even manifested a blanket and a couple of pillows. He did not need to sleep just yet, but Kai could probably use a bit of proper rest. So, Sunny sent the charming archer to bed and sat at the desk, creating more arrows for him. Slayer stayed outside, guarding their makeshift home, even though they had never been as safe as they were here, in Ariel's game, for as long as the sun was hidden behind the horizon. "I wonder what they'll do at dawn." Sunny had hoped that the snow worm and the clockwork giant would move to conquer the Ash Castle, but now that he thought about it, that was pointless. After all, the special nature of castles was that the squares they stood upon never changed color. So, they could not be truly conquered. That meant that the two snow beasts would probably pursue him north. Will we have to fight one or both of them to reach the shrine? That would be unfortunate, since Sunny wanted to kill them as a sacrifice to Ariel's game. He briefly considered tossing the figure of the snow beast in his possession into the vent of the newly created volcano, but decided against it in the end. There was no altar in front of the main vent here, so he would probably not receive a revelation by doing so. In the morning, the rising sun turned snow into glass bridges again. Sunny, Kai, and Slayer watched the clockwork giant walk across one to the ash castle, while the snow worm crawled back to the mountain where its nest had been, directly west of the newly created volcano. Sunny sighed. They were boxed in, soon to be corralled. The snow worm blocked the way west, while moving east would lead them away from the western shrine. That only left the northern direction. But if there, after one move, they would be surrounded by two snow beasts from west and south, and a snow devil from the north. He winced. What a bother. 2,342 divine whims. There was a long time to go before sunset, so the three of them were stuck on the newborn volcano for now. Sunny spent about an hour turning the shadow house into a shadow manor, purely for his own amusement. The elegant edifices rose and fell, changing style. Wings were added to the main building, a bell tower rose from the ground, the bell ringing loudly as it was assaulted by the wind. After a while, there was even a semblance of garden, perched precariously on the steep slope of the volcano. The bushes, the trees, and the flowers were all inky black and intricate, but devoid of life. Sunny sat in front of a flower bed full of black roses for a long time, staring at them intently. Eventually, one of the roses slowly changed, its petals swelling with a vibrant red color. Color was another property of matter, after all. When light shined on an object, some of it was absorbed, and some of it was reflected. The reflected light was what humans perceived as color. Sunny had never attempted to form the manifested shadows to absorb and reflect light in a specific manner, but nothing really prevented him from trying. He had successfully turned the shadow rose red after experimenting for a while. Funnily enough, changing the color of a single flower had been more difficult, and strained him more, than building the entire manor. Both the manor and the rose were destined to be destroyed in no more than a day, when the volcano was conquered by the snow domain. Their beauty was fleeting, and would be gone in an instant. But possibly that was what made art truly precious. Its evanescent nature. Sunny had never deemed himself an artist, but at that moment, he thought that possibly being able to create something breathtaking was not too bad. He studied the red rose for a few minutes, then shook his head and made it turn black once again. Black flowers suited his taste better. Even knowing that his black garden would be swallowed by ice and snow come tomorrow, Sunny still made it permanent, partially in defiance of that inevitability, partially out of a peculiar hope that it would survive against all odds. It's truly remarkable. Turning his head, Sunny glanced at Kai, who had approached him at some point. There was an expression of wonder on the charming archer's face, prompting Sunny to raise an eyebrow. What is? Kai hesitated for a few seconds, then gestured around them. This. The trees, the flowers, the manor, just appearing out of nowhere on your whim. They say that supremacy is like taking a half step into godhood. It all sounded like mere words to me before, but now, I am starting to understand what a demigod is. Sunny smiled faintly. Possibly that's because all the supremes you've met before were half devils, at best, instead of half gods. He sighed and then rose from the ground, turning away from the black roses. What do you think being supreme means? Kai considered his question for a few seconds. A supreme is someone who rules. Someone who carries responsibility for their subjects, and is powerful enough to bear the weight of that responsibility. Someone whose soul is vast enough to encompass the world, thus becoming a domain, a sovereign. Sunny smiled and shook his head. No, a supreme is simply someone who is daring enough to reshape the world according to their whims. He patted Kai on the shoulder. You are bound to become supreme yourself, on E-Day soon. So, I suggest you start daring. Kai stared at him blankly for a bit, which made Sunny sigh. Stop being afraid of your own power, Kai. Embrace it. His friend frowned and lingered for a while. Eventually, he asked, even if it turns me into a monster? Sunny chuckled. Especially if it turns you into a monster. How else are you going to survive in this appalling world, let alone change it? Inhaling deeply, he headed for the manor. His short second of rest was over, and he had to get back to weaving. As Sunny walked away, Kai suddenly asked, "Is that what you did?" Sunny halted his steps, smiled wistfully, and then continued walking. Of course. Countless times over. Kai remained silent for a bit, then shook his head. Well, I disagree. I don't think that becoming a monster is something to be proud of. So, I refuse. Sunny grinned. Says a guy who killed a dragon, and is now himself a dragon. He kept that thought to himself, though. Instead, he gave Kai a thumbs up. What a daring thing to say. Keep it up. With that, Sunny disappeared behind the door of the manor, leaving the charming archer alone. Well, alone, being watched by Slayer. The murderous shadow was sharpening her swords on a piece of stone, a completely unnecessary thing to do, considering the sublime materials from which they had been crafted, while observing the two of them silently. There was no particular emotion in her inky black eyes, but the measured movement of a blade across the surface of the stone slowed down for a moment. In the evening, they crossed the obsidian bridge and conquered another mountain in the north. From there, they could see the fourth row of Ariel's game, and the central square of the board, where a snow devil was waiting for them, protecting it. Sunny had expected to see another mountain, but he could not have been more wrong. As he, Kai, and Slayer stood on the slope of another newborn volcano, their expressions were a little odd. Sunny blinked a couple of times. What the hell? In front of them, far in the distance, a huge tree stood where a mountain was supposed to be. Its roots were hidden beneath the sea of clouds, and its branches seemed to support the sky, spanning countless kilometers across. Kai glanced at Sunny, dumbfounded. I'm not seeing things, am I? How can such an enormous tree exist? Sunny nodded slowly, unable to look away from the fantastical view. No, you're not, and indeed, that is one humongous tree. He shook his head in disbelief and said, his voice full of wonder. I mean, it's almost as large as a single branch of the largest tree I've ever seen.